Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
Good morning and welcome to Newsline, live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo on TV1. And this morning we're joined by the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Mr. W.A. Vijayawardena, and the Director of Studies at the Bandanakis Centre for International Studies, Dr. Arindra Vidanage. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for taking time out. On a day and a week that promises to be rather eventful on several scores, we thought we'll play you a little clip of a matter that is causing great consternation politically and financially. So here we go, listen up.
Sujiva Senasinghe cannot hide it because it is a fraud that has been revealed before our very eyes. This enjoining order was issued so that all the fraud done during the 100 days will not be revealed.
Ranil Wickramasinghe cannot be clean. Not only did they protect the corrupt, they obtained an enjoining order from court preventing a report compiled by a committee appointed by Parliament on the fraudulent central bank bond transaction from being released. Why? Because the country sees the fact that the leader and his colleagues got together and protected the accused. This is why the UNP obtained an enjoining order from court. So please do not believe that they will work to solve the problems of the people.
3 months ago, COPE carried out investigations into the central bank. Thereby, COPE has arrived at a decision that it needs an audit report carried out by the Auditor General through his department regarding the bond scam of the central bank. That investigation is taking place at present. We have received information that the report will be compiled and completed by Tuesday. On Wednesday at 2 in the afternoon, the COPE committee will convene in Parliament to study the matter further.
And there you are. Comrade Anura Kumara says that by Wednesday, the COPE committee will be discussing the Auditor General's report on the central bank so-called bond scam. So this week promises some exciting stuff. However, Mr. Vijayawardena, no sooner the vote results was announced in Britain that Britain had voted to leave the European Union. The first thing that was reported was a statement from the Governor of the Bank of England. It struck me that this was even more than the politics. It was so very essential that the man in charge of Britain's finances was making a statement to reassure and to keep obviously the stability of the markets and so on. It shows, doesn't it, Mr. Vijayawardena, how important the role of the governor of a central bank is?
Yeah, you are correct, Faraz, because when the results were pouring in, the whole international community, we didn't expect the Brexit to win, had simply became panic, and they started selling sterling pounds in the market, and the result was that the sterling pound started falling. Even before the British markets were open for that day, sterling pound fell by about 10% in the international markets, and as a result there was a fear that it might even fall further, because this George Soros, the international financial investment guru, had warned that in the event the Britain leaving the European Union, the sterling pound will fall to a parity with euro. Therefore, the market was very anxious and they were nervous. Because of this reason, early in the morning when the market was open, Governor Mark Carney of Bank of England, he appeared before the press and he gave a very solemn promise to the international community for us. But
Which
he
is
said,
what did he say?
He said that nothing to worry. The Bank of England will take every action. That's his own words. So Bank of England will take every action together with the British Treasury. He said together with the British Treasury to restore normalcy to sterling pound as well as the financial markets in the United Kingdom, because this is a very important message for us, because London is the global financial center. Because if we want to borrow money from the international markets, the only place that we have to go to is London, because we find all the lenders there. So because of this reason, if London fails, it's a failure of the entire United Kingdom. And Governor Mark Carney came and appeared before the TV and he made the solemn promise. And the important thing here for us is that George Soros was defeated for the first time by Governor Mark Carney. And after the announcement, the sterling pound started reversing its trend, because it had fallen in the night by about 10% and it stopped at 8%, and now of course within the next 2 weeks period, in my opinion, sterling pound will come back to its normal level and there won't be any problem. The reason is the reputation of the governor. If the governor is considered by the global financial markets as a person who will actually do what he says, because there's no difference between the word and the deed between the governor of the Bank of England, which he had brought from, because he was the governor of Bank of Canada, and even during that period he was considered as a tough central banker. Therefore the international community started believing in him rather than believing in George Soros. So that's the beauty of the governor of the Bank of Canada for us.
So he's a Canadian, and
he's a Canadian citizen,
and he came to Britain. Isn't there sort of a conflict there?
No, for us now, because most of the central banks in the world, including Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of France, and all those central banks, when they select a governor to the post, they start the process about 2 years before the period of the incumbent governor expires, because they start headhunting, looking for people, nominating people, having a series of interviews with people. And in the case of Bank of England, the governor Mark Carney was selected, and after that he had to come back to the United Kingdom. He was a citizen of Canada. He immediately relinquished his citizenship from Canada and he became a citizen of the United Kingdom to assume the duties as governor of Bank of England.
Why do you think he did that? Is it essential?
No, that is because once you become the governor of any country, governor of the central bank of any country, your loyalty should be to that country.
Right.
So the reason why he became a citizen of the United Kingdom, because he has to now devote his full, not only by letter, by spirit. He has to devote his attention to that particular country, and that is why he became a citizen of that country immediately. And
obviously he must have been in residence in London all that time.
All the time, yes. In fact, there is another connection of Mark Carney to UK, because he got his PhD from University of Oxford, and his wife is a British citizen.
I see.
So therefore there is a connection.
So there is a nexus there.
Yeah, nexus there.
But what does it mean, Dr. Harinder, what does it mean in terms of our trading with Britain and the EU? What does it mean now that Britain is divorced, or will be in 2 years' time?
I don't think it will have a direct impact on our trade, because we can still negotiate, with Britain separately, and yes, there would be impact in the longer run, but I don't think there would be any impact in the shorter run.
The short run, you mean next 2 years?
Next 2 years, because I think what you have to take in context is not just our trade, but what will happen to Britain, and because at the moment the British does not have an exit plan from the EU. They have, because the Article 50, which invokes the divorce, it does not specify a time period.
Okay.
So people assume it's 2 years, but it's not stated on the Lisbon Treaty.
Right.
So but now the problem is the Europeans want the Brits out faster.
Right.
And the Brits want to take time on it.
Right.
So it's very interesting. The European Commissioner, the EU Commissioner, who's executive head of the EU Juncker, has said, well, it was not the amicable divorce. It's not the amicable divorce, but also it was not not a very intimate love affair between the Brits and the EU.
Yeah.
So it will take time.
I mean, they hung on to their currency, they hung on to their immigration borders, so they were not part of Europe like that.
No, they were not. So for some Europeans, European politicians, the Brits were always irritants, but in a certain way, because they felt that. But in a realist foreign policy, if you're looking at it from a realist perspective, the Brits were a very necessity to balance the European attitude, because the Brits represent a major arc in European economy. We're talking about the economy. Mr. Vijayawardena outlined that, but if you look at the security umbrella, the British and the French forces kind of contribute a lot to the European security projection. So minus Britain, Europe would not have that international security presence and the impact it would have. So there is a fear among Europeans that in the 21st century the EU will become irrelevant in the context of security geopolitics, and let the Americans and the Chinese fight it out for a global leadership. So that's why some people feel that the Brexit would hurt Europe badly in the long run, and of course it will probably hurt the Brits because of the very ominous signs of a disintegration of the whole union.
Going back a little bit to what Mr. Vijayawardena said about the whole essence of integrity and reputation, what more can one say about integrity and reputation and principled politics than the fact that David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, came out within minutes out of his front door at number 10 Downing Street and announced to the world that he would be stepping down. That was because he led the campaign to remain, and he'd lost on that very, to him, important principle. And he announced his resignation. Does that speak volumes for his integrity?
Exactly,
and his
Faraz, because when a leader finds that he is not being accepted by the people of that country, it is always in his own interest for us to step down. Because one advantage for the United Kingdom is there's no shortage of leaders in that country, because they have the second level, third level, fourth level built up and developed. Therefore, anybody can take it over from David Cameron, and maybe a person better than David Cameron can take it over. Now, countries like Sri Lanka, the developing world, our problem is we don't have the second level, third level, fourth level. We have not developed the leadership in our politics, in companies, even in institutions like government institutions like central bank. We have not developed them. Because of that reason, there is a big problem for countries like us to replace an existing leader, and that is one of the reasons why our leaders don't step down.
That's probably true. What about it also, isn't it, that we have a very sort of nepotistic practices in our country, especially with politics? Is it because the people they can recognize names, oh well, he must be good because he is related to the Bandanayakas or to the Rajapaksas or to the Senanayakas or
Yeah, one reason is that because once you have built up your name, it's called brand name. Once the brand name is built up, of course, no brand name in marketing for us, no brand name will survive for a long period of time, because it's subject to, like any other natural phenomenon, subject to decay and depreciation. Because the brand names also will go down. The same thing will happen to politicians also. So what happens is that in a country like the United Kingdom, when David Cameron steps down, there can be another person who may be even better than David Cameron, who will take over the leadership of the country, and he will be leading the country towards prosperity. But in Sri Lanka, in a country like Sri Lanka, our main problem is that we are still saddled with the old brand names, which have to be rebranded in terms of marketing terminology and presented to the electorate for acceptance. So that is where we have failed in many respects.
Back again to the impact on Brexit to Sri Lanka. What about students, our students who go to England? What would happen to them?
Well, of course, we don't have any problem about the students going to United Kingdom for us, because nothing to do with the whether Britain is in EU or not. It has nothing to do with our students going to study at universities in the United Kingdom. But of course, what would happen is, now we have another problem why our students do not want to go to United Kingdom is the depreciation of the Sri Lanka rupee against the sterling pound, which has increased the costs of our students, and as a result, students now prefer to go to countries like Australia, Singapore, and even Malaysia and China for further studies rather than the United Kingdom. And because of that reason, the UK will lose its students flow from coming from India, Pakistan, even African countries, because of the high costs arising from the appreciated sterling pound. But
We'll come back to you. Sorry to cut you midstream. We'll take a short break. Do stay tuned. Newsline will be back very soon.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
Welcome back to Newsline, where we're joined by Mr. W.A. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and Dr. Harindra Vitanage from the Bandanaika Centre for International Studies. So our students headed to England, the home of democracy, will not find any great impact on their fees, do you think?
Well, the students, as Mr. Vijay brought out, might feel a little, there will be a little kind of relief because the pound is going down. But when it comes to attract, the British university system could attract a lot of European funding to do, fascinating research. Well, there are two arguments. One which says the funding will not wither away, it's intact, because the universities always had their contingency plans, and the universities do not work in the same system, the same narrative as the states does. So, if the Brits leave the EU, that does not mean the university grants will be cut off. But in the long run, I can remember, even like 7-8 years ago, 10 years ago, British universities used to hire professors who could bring in the most number of EU grants. These are grants going into millions of pounds or millions of euro, which really benefited. So they could have PhD programs running. Sri Lankans benefited from it. Many South Asians, Africans, Americans, because they come to do their PhDs in Britain because it's faster than in the US. It takes double the time there. So the Britain as an education hub, in the long run there may be certain ramifications, because there are European universities which are competing with British universities now, and that funding may go there, and that will be one major impact in the long run. But in the short run, I think all major universities in Britain would have had their contingency plans, and the ongoing funds I don't think would be cut off like that.
Just to add to what Dr. Aryan said, for us now, most of the British universities in the run-up to the Brexit, they had met, their senior officers have met, and they have prepared, as he says, a contingency plan, how they should respond to if in the event the United Kingdom leaving European Union. And for example, the Vice Chancellor of Northumbria University, he had announced that he already has a plan, and therefore he is now trying to attract the European funding through informal sources rather than going through the British government. So therefore, as I agree with him, because the ramification is only for maybe about 2 years. Within this 2 year period, the British university will be able to again re-establish their contacts with the research centers in the continental Europe, and then become one of the leading developers of scientific knowledge in the world.
So the British companies who export to Europe will now have to they will find that goods are being taxed in Europe as opposed to being one common market. How is that going to have an impact on us here?
Well, it's hard to again ascertain the impact directly. You know, it'll take a long. I mean, it'll take some time to understand that. But but if you look at us from a regional perspective, right?
Yeah.
You know, from South Asia, because the fact that we are interested in integrating more with our South Asian regional markets. So, for example, Indian companies, which has a major investment in Britain, will probably feel it more, and probably then the trickle down effect will it will come on to us as well. So I'll give you an example. For example, Tata. Tata has, I think, nearly about 20 companies, which includes Jaguar and Land Rover.
Yeah.
And now, immediately there will be a 10% levy on those vehicles going into Europe. So that we are looking at more than 500,000 jobs in Britain, which are directly provided by Tata.
Right.
So there may be a lot of Indians, a lot of expat Sri Lankans, So, I mean, what we can't, though we can't connect the dots directly, I mean, there is going to be significant impact in our trade, in the way things work because of those tariffs. And it will take, I mean, the problem is renegotiating those tariffs because with the EU and Britain. For example, I mean, just quickly going back to the point he made about universities.
Yeah.
So if the Brits go through with the divorce, I mean, they have to now, then the EU also might want to make their own brand name, minus the Britain. So then then the university system, they would probably put more money, their company, so that will have an impact. I mean, Sri Lanka will feel the pinch, but my kind of more skeptical view is if EU disintegrates.
Yeah.
That's the question. I mean, I don't think Brexit is just the catalyst. For me, it's a catalyst. So how they manage that would have, if you're looking at the impact on Sri Lanka in the long run, it will be deeply tied to the destiny of EU itself. What if the European Union implodes? Then what? Well,
I also agree with him because there are signs. The Netherlands is trying to exit European Union.
Yes.
Finland and Sweden will follow it, and if this gets disintegrated, it will be a huge problem for the rest of the world rather than UK or any European country, because today, far as we look at European Union as a single bloc, single trading bloc, single political bloc, single bloc that would determine the fate of the future world. That's what I mean.
Yes.
So
exactly.
if that particular role which the European Union plays in the world global arena, if it is no more there, we don't know who will take it to.
Huge vacuum.
It's a huge vacuum.
And what about GSP Plus? What will happen to that?
I mean, if Europe gets disintegrated, then GSP Plus is already gone. So
it's an irrelevant discussion.
It's an irrelevant discussion. We don't have to discuss about it.
What about at the moment with Britain?
At the moment, of course, GSP Plus is only for European Union and not for UK.
Right.
And as a result, it's unaffected. But if as Dr. Haren said, that the catalyst leads to a disintegration of the entire European Union, of course, then we will have to have individual trade agreements in each country in European Union, which is a very complicated matter because it affects the politics, geopolitics, the relationship which we have with those countries and so forth. And therefore, it may not be easy for Sri Lanka to enter into individual trade agreements with about, say, 26 countries in the European Union today.
To add to that, the problem there is, I mean, we have to ask the question, why did the Brexit happen? It's because of that return of fear, which I kind of discussed earlier in a different program here. It's a fact that there is a lot of inward-looking policies. The political leadership in Europe, they're looking at going back into protectionism. It's all about protecting their borders, protecting their own economies. So that's not a great news for the global economy at all.
Right.
So if we want to enter, now we have to think of political leadership which is inward looking, not outward looking.
Right.
So there is protectionism, increasing tariffs, trying to protect European jobs. none of that helps. That narrative doesn't help. What we want. I mean, what the world wants. So what we don't want is imploding EU. Secondly, a EU which the result of that implosion will create closed-door European nations. That's not good for business at all.
We noticed that about 4 Sri Lankan politicians went to Europe to help the Stay campaign, the Remain campaign. What was that? Was that a bit of PR?
Well, I to be very honest, I really don't know the rationale behind it. But let me try to understand it. Saying so, well, the spirit of the fact was the whole idea of the world. I mean, is about global governance.
Yeah.
So if the current government is in sync with that idea that this is a liberal democratic idea that there should be a system of global governance, and supranational institutions like the EU is very important in that play, where you can create liberal norms like human rights, like democracy, institutions. So I would assume that was the idea. I don't know, to be very honest. I have nothing to do with the current state, so I have no. This is from outsider's perspective. This is the only rationale. The idea, the spirit of liberal, cooperation, the spirit that you don't want. Because there's a major fear that far right is taking over. Right-wing racist xenophobia is rampant. So I believe this government which came into power, kind of plank of liberal egalitarian understanding, probably that's the grander picture I have. I don't know what the machinations behind that is, but that's the only way we can justify something like that. In the grand scheme of things, if I look it from as an international relations expert, that's my view. If I am a foreign policy maker, I would support the Remain campaign in that spirit. You don't want a disintegrated, chaotic world. You'd rather prefer to deal with a more stabilized, more coherent
But
system.
it seems to be going down that sort of disunited way, because now we have a situation where Scotland is saying that we really want to be in the EU. But they can't do that because they are part of the United Kingdom.
No, they actually can do it.
Can they?
They can do it. There are 2 ways for them to do it. Because there are 2, I mean, we see 2 years for the exit. So the Scots can go for a referendum. They went for a referendum in 2014 and they lost it to gain independence. They can go call for the second referendum. And then with the referendum's mandate, they can go to what we call a continuation state. There is a legal thing.
Right.
The Scots can seek that legality,
Right.
use that legal principle. It's a bit of a grey area, international law and European Union law. Secondly, they can divorce from the Union, and then they can seek membership from EU very soon. And it seems like the Scots are heading that way. That's because of the...
What about the security situation? What about these nuclear bases that Scotland's looking after?
That's going to be a major challenge, because the Brits are still, I mean, the British hold a major sway in the security architecture because of their nukes. So the Brits and the French are the only 2 countries which have significant...
Also, all these North Sea oil fields are what is now would then be part of Scotland.
So let me clear, the nukes are the British nukes, the nuclear deterrent the Brits have is based in Fastlane, which is in Glasgow in Scotland.
Yeah.
So they probably have to have a negotiation about who's going to run them, who's going to own them. I mean, well, there are legalities again, but
And knowing the Scots, who's going to pay for them?
Yes, that's a problem. That's a major challenge for Westminster.
Right.
So that's an interesting thing. You don't want a Great Britain without their nukes. So
right.
they won't be that great, and they won't be that great without Scotland as well.
Right. So it's we need to watch the space with some interest.
Yeah, very much.
And we need to watch the space in terms of our central bank and our Think Again campaign, which is drawing to a close, but it's still going strong as ever, door to door across this nation, to find out how your representatives are doing by asking you how you think that they're doing. On that note, thank you, gentlemen, for being on Newsline.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time, your presence, and look forward to having you again. And indeed, we look forward to having you again, same time, same place, tomorrow morning, only from Newsline on TV1. Take care, have a great day, and a wonderful week ahead. God bless.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.